listen to the stories of what took place and the laughter as this man was shooting incredible people, you say to yourself, how can this possibly be happening in the United States of America? How can this be happening? And we have to be tough, and we have to be smart, and we have to be vigilant. It's going to happen again and again and again. And we are not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
That was presumptive GOP presidential nominee Donald Trump earlier today talking about the rising threat of ISIS and radical Islam. Now, earlier, I sat down with Donald Trump's sons, Don Jr. and Eric, and I asked them both about the Orlando terror attack and their father's campaign. Let's take a look. Good to see you guys.
Good to be with you.
All right. So we have this tragedy in Orlando, and it seems that it is now brought to the forefront of the debate in the country in terms of presidential politics. You got the refugee issue with Syrian refugees. You got the immigration issue of building the wall. You got the issue of energy independence and intelligence. Four of the key issues that your dad has brought up in the course of this campaign. How big does this now become?
Listen, it's big. What we've shown is that the left's policies of coddling, their policy of appeasement, it doesn't work. You're not going to hug these guys into submission. You're not going to get them to stop doing what they're doing. They're sociopaths, and you have to deal with them accordingly. The only thing they understand is force. And I hope that people realize this. I mean, because it's such a shame that it takes a tragedy like this for people to realize that these are never going to be good people. These extremists are never going to be good people. They're always going to be out there trying to kill you.
You think about this. I said earlier this week that I think your dad was responsible for shaming Hillary Clinton into finally saying radical Islamic terrorism. But think about this. For the better part of the last 8 years, it has been called workplace violence, overseas contingency operations, man-caused disasters, anything but what it really is.
Without question. But how many more of these do you need to go through, right? We went through 9/11. We went through California. You know, now we have Orlando.
Chattanooga,
Boston. I mean, there's
Belgium,
millions.
Paris.
And not to mention Benghazi and so many others. I mean, how many more of these do we have to go through before they say the words radical Islamic terrorism? I mean, they're afraid to utter it. And you can't fight an enemy if you can't even call them by their name. And you know, this speaks to this whole narrative. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the wall before and protecting our southern border. I'm glad you mentioned taking the oil. We should take the oil. I mean, by sending money overseas, we're funding the very people who want to hurt us. I mean, it's insane. Well, and also the Iran nuclear deal. Look, the $150 billion, and you have Kerry going on TV saying, you know, some of this money will definitely land in the hands of terrorists. I mean, how crazy are we?
Here's the differences, though, that are emerging in the campaign. Your dad says, no, temporary ban. Your dad says, build a wall. Border Patrol agents I've interviewed say that they're seeing more and more Middle Eastern men crossing the southern border, many more. And then I think the issue of energy independence is key. Hillary's against coal, wants to end coal mining, fracking. She's against drilling. You know, we wouldn't even bomb parts of Iraq because of environmental concerns. So these 3, 4 big issues and the intelligence gathering represent a major now choice in the campaign.
Sean, she's not going to do anything against Saudi Arabia because they funded $25 million over the last few years. I mean, there's someone out there saying that they funded 20% of her campaign so far indirectly and or through the Clinton Foundation, which is a total fraud. Yet, these countries are funneling and paying for our politicians. They're buying, you know, our stupidity.
See, I interviewed your dad yesterday, and I brought up this very point, and I think this is key. And I know you and I were talking about this before. Here you have Saudi Arabia gave as much as $25 million, maybe more, to the Clinton Foundation.
And we don't know where that goes, by the way. That's not a charity like Eric's involved in charity, right, where it goes to help kids with pediatric cancer. The rating agencies that do the charities, they can't even tell you where this money goes. They won't even look at the Clinton Foundation because it's so morally corrupt.
Saudi Arabia gives up to 25. The government of Brunei gives up to 5. Qatar gives up to $5 million. By the way, you know how they have laws that allow the execution of gays and lesbians? Women in Saudi Arabia can't drive.
Under Sharia law, she couldn't go there. She couldn't go into a hotel and use a bathroom in the lobby because they don't exist, because Sharia law doesn't allow that in so many of the properties. I mean, it's really, really, really sad. It's actually incredibly scary. I mean, they're buying political influence.
Let me focus in, though, on the policies of Saudi Arabia, of the government of Brunei and Qatar and the UAE and Kuwait and Oman, because they practice Sharia, and women are told how to dress. Women must dress a certain way. In many countries can't drive under Sharia. They need 4 male eyewitnesses for rape. Men determine if they go to school. Men determine if they're allowed to work. In Saudi Arabia, a woman can't leave the house without a male's permission. And if a woman's raped, 4 male eyewitnesses. Now, she claims she's the champion of women's rights, but she took $25 million from that country and millions more from these other countries that practice Sharia. Gays in 8 countries, including many that donated to her, can be executed. She claims she's a champion of gay rights, women's rights. How can she accept the money from these countries and not criticize them? Did they buy her silence?
Sean, $140 million buys a lot of silence. Okay, that's all it is. And that's what we've seen. Again, this isn't something that's happened over the last few years with the Clintons. I mean, these things have been going on for years. There's been smoke around everything that they've ever touched. Everything's been corrupt. It's the biggest example of big government corruption, paid influence. That's all they've done. They've made $141 million peddling influence in our government.
When they came out of the White House,
that's not a civil servant.
When they came out of the White House, they said they were dead broke. That was the exact line. All right, 2001, they came out of the White House, they're dead broke. Now they're worth $200 million. I mean, what happened in that amount of time that somebody can be a government employee?
They said they were dead broke, but they had $30 million in the bank. You know, because that's their version of dead broke.
Between 2013 and 2015, just speeches alone, they made close to $60 million.
While being government employee. And that's the part that's really disturbing to me. I'm certainly a capitalist. If you can go out and you can do well for yourself, fantastic. But if you're supposed to be representing the interests of the country, you wonder, my father's been talking about this better than anybody, about our awful trade deals. Well, it's not surprising that we have awful trade deals if countries like Saudi Arabia are giving private foundations that they have tens and tens of millions of dollars. I mean, it's not surprising that somebody hasn't come down on them very, very hard.
I will tell you this, because this is now, believe it or not, my 30th year on radio. I look a lot younger, right?
Yes.
My 20th year on Fox, but every campaign is the same. The Democratic playbook. Your father, in the course of this campaign, by the time November comes, they will try to create the image he is racist, he is sexist, he is homophobic, that he wants to poison the air and water, and he wants to take grandma in her wheelchair and throw her over a cliff and kill her.
Well, look at the hypocrisy of that, right? If you look at the Clinton Foundation, just back to that, because it illustrates everything. The average female executive at the Clinton Foundation makes $83,000 less than the average male executive, right? But yet, Hillary's a champion of women's issues. I mean, it's really, really sad. You can't speak out of both sides of your mouth.
But isn't it worse that...
Well, I want to know if she gives back the $25 million.
What?
Is she going to give back the $25 million that she took from Saudi, who would execute gays, who don't let women have any rights? I mean, you can't have it both ways. And that's what the left is able to get away with very well. They're always able to have the best of both worlds. You know, it's always do as I say, not as I do.